Get ready to get in the game. Stretch, strengthen, live, and thrive. You can be a winning athlete in the game of life. It's the Peel Appeal with author and corrective exercise specialist Matt Peel.
Hey, this is Matt Peel, host of the Peel Appeal podcast. What's happening out there today in your world? I literally say that in your world because we have a very special guest who is coming from a different part of the world today. It's someone I've been on her podcast, man, I think back during COVID is when I was like, and we were just talking how long ago that's been, and 4 years now. So I'm very happy and pleased to announce, because we definitely talk about science here. It's all about science on the Peel Appeal podcast and how it can relate to you to where you are now. And with that, I'd love to bring in Dr. Rachael Jefferson, joining me from the great continent and country of Australia. Welcome.
Hi, it's good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
You're welcome. I won't say what we just discussed off air of what the Australians call it yet, but maybe by the end of the podcast, we'll comment on their statement.
Very true.
Yes, pretty fantastic. So Rachael does a lot of research on physical education and fundamentals of movement skills and gender with working with women and neoliberalizing the body and physical education, and also with aging. And she's done a ton of research. And so what we're going to talk about today is how our attitudes start regarding exercise and physical activity in PE. What we learn, what we don't learn, what's kind of being taught out there now as things have shifted. I know this here in the United States, PE has become more recess because there is no recess in elementary schools and junior high schools. So kids are just needing some type of activity break. And unfortunately, it shifted away from true physical education and into, let the ball roll out there, or just let them run around the playground for 15 minutes and really marginalize. And we'll try and talk about why it's so important for us to learn fundamental movement skills at an early age, and then their impact not just as youth, but then as we get into where we're at now, into our 30s, our 40s, our 50s and 60s, and how that's related. So let's get started on that, shall we? So talk about, first of all, Rachael, about what are fundamental movement skills and why do we need them?
Well, basically, this is one of my favorite subjects. I've been working in fundamental movement skills for more than 20 years now. But essentially, they're what we see as the precursor skills for more specialized and more complex activities that occur later in life. So you see quite a lot of a sport framing around fundamental movement skills, which some scholars have a little bit of beef with, really. Because they're saying that they're driving that whole kind of competitive sport agenda. So, for example, we have catching, we have throwing, we have jumping for distance, jumping for height. We have body management skills such as rolling or climbing, etc. So there are some broader fundamental movement skills, and I would just say here that there are lots and lots of different international requirements or kind of stipulations as to what fundamental movement skills are. So we do need to be mindful of that. And as someone who has worked in several different countries, when you sort of throw out there, oh, we're going to look at fundamental movement skills, they're very, very socioculturally specific. So, for example, in Australia, we have quite a sport-oriented framing of fundamental movement skills, whereas in other cultures and nations, such as in Myanmar, when I was working there several years ago, they have much more of a sort of collaborative view of physical activity and fundamental movement skills. And even their basic activities in physical education, they don't really push the competitive activities. It's more collaborative games for them that are more important.
Yeah, so there's a lot of I think nature versus nurture also with these fundamental movement skills on things that, watch a baby learn how to stand up and crawl and move around. Obviously, they're not in class. They're not being instructed. I didn't teach my son, okay, this is how you do a proper squat. I wasn't even in fitness back then. But this is how you do things. This is how you stand up. This is how you walk. This is how you crawl. So there are things that humans know and learn how to do automatically, nature. But as we get into this other, into school, and we need to learn, the nurture and learn the skills, because then what we learn there affects what's happening with us right now. And then if we take it to an aging level, because you do some work with aging, so what's the importance of as we age these fundamental movement skills?
Yeah, it's interesting. That kind of lifespan approach is something that's really important for us when we think about fundamental movement skills. So as you mentioned, there are some that are caught and learned just because of the way humans are and the way we are designed to move. So we often call those sort of rudimentary skills prior to learning more specialized skills. And in terms of fundamental movement skills, I always say children learn a lot outside of school. We are certainly not the only influence upon fundamental movement skills. We know for sure that the parent and the family community around the child will majorly affect children's playing ability, and a lot of fundamental movement skills are learned through play and through the family network, etc. So if you've got particularly in the research says that the mother, although we know that fathers have a very huge influence as well upon children's FMS, but particularly they say that if the mother is very physically active and also very much involved with her children in a very physical way, that young children's, particularly girls' skills, can literally be refined much earlier. So we often talk about this window of opportunity between about 4 years of age to 8 years of age, where those basic fundamental movement skills are learned, the catching, the throwing, the skipping, etc.
Right.
The reality is that many children from the age of 4 to 8 years do not learn those skills then, and they learn them either slightly before that or a lot later, actually, because they've not had the opportunity to have them revised or refined with the kind of scaffolding and support that they need. So they can pick up quite bad habits. For example, with throwing skills, there can be all sorts of injuries, particularly with a very complex skill such as the overhand throw. And there can be all sorts of shoulder injuries and so on that arise from that if they don't learn those basic cues and skill criteria and get those in place. So in terms of later on, what we find is in some of the aging research that I've been reviewing and sort of working with in the last few years is that if we've got those basics in place, for example, balance on one foot is very, very important for us to learn.
Yes,
how many times in the average day do we actually slightly lose balance and then recapture our balance and become more stable? So as we get older, and there's that much higher risk, particularly from 65 plus, of falls, and that risk increases greatly as we move into our 70s and 80s. If we haven't learned those core skills of balance and body management skills, then there can actually be a much higher risk of falling and so on. And we also know that with our aging population that we have, particularly in Europe, but also here in Australia, that the more independent that older people can be, then there's a whole knock-on effect of well-being and psychological health as well. So this kind of reinforces, for me and lots of other researchers in this area, the influence, the holistic influence that fundamental movement skills have throughout our lifespan.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, when I work with my older clients, and the example I give them, I said, you know, if your keys hit the ground, is that just a blip on the radar, or is this a monumental event and you trying to get down there and pick them up? You know, the whole goal is it's just a blip on the radar. You don't think about it, and you can get down, bend down, pick up the keys, even if you got to reach somewhere. Because if it is a monumental event, then we do have some problems. Then we got to learn these movement skills kind of all over again. And I know that's not what someone wants to do when they're in their 70s. You know, we kind of revert back to, all right, I'm in my high school youth again. I should be able to do everything that I did at 75 that I did when I was 18, and that's just not the case.
I think that's a really important point, Matt. I think, you know, that whole kind of notion of adaptability that you're raising there is really important. And I think that, you know, certainly when you get to be sort of 50 plus, that I always say, listen to your body. It's really important to actually listen and have more rest, have deep rest. Don't push yourself so hard on the level of where you're literally your holistic health is being affected. Exercise, as we know, can be very addictive. I know that I have used exercise as an emotional crutch many times in my life. So you know, you might not want to tackle something that's going on with you emotionally or psychologically, and you'll just go out on this 10K run, you know, to actually manage it, and then you come back and what you've actually done is feed the trauma or whatever is going on for you psychologically, because you're pumping in more cortisol and you're not actually dealing with some of those socio-emotional or psychological things that are going on. Right. But exercise, you know, also has this incredible capacity to repair and also enhance us as older athletes. You know, we know that it actually has a cellular effect. We know that it actually affects and activates our DNA repair, for example. So it lengthens our telomeres. So, you know, those are the things that actually tell us that in some people, that if you're sedentary, that you have shorter telomeres, and that's your DNA. So that's what I find quite fascinating as I get older myself, is, you know, wow, you know, there are harmful effects of exercise if you become addictive, but in general, there are so many benefits to it, particularly for women, you know, in their 40s and 50s who are losing their bone density. And we need to make sure that from 50 plus that we need to reduce the risk of osteoporosis in menopausal and postmenopausal women, etc. So, but apart from all of that, you'll know yourself as an athlete that there's this whole delay. If we look at around the studies of the research linked to exercise, there's a delay of many onset chronic conditions and disease because of the fact that we are made to move, and the fact that we don't move enough is very problematic for us as human beings, and that's linked to some forms of Alzheimer's as well. There's a strong set of research linking cognitive decline and studies that actually talk about reduced risk of dementia and so on. So yeah, some fascinating new studies out there, because we've got this enhanced capacity to look at brain development with brain scans and so on now that we never had 20, 30 years ago.
Right. So you mentioned something, and I know you've done a lot of research on it, and we're talking about females, and not just in the PE and you know, from a neoliberalized body, I kind of talked about PE, but now let's go on the aging side. So what's for the aging female in the perimenopause, the menopause, the postmenopause, what from your research and your experience, from an exercise standpoint, what's important for them to do?
As I always say to the women that I talk to and work with and research with, I always say it's just so important to actually listen to what's going on with you, because we tend, you know, a lot of women, we strive too much in life. We're kind of socially conditioned to do that. And my research looks at very much, you know, the patriarchy and how we internalize a lot of that as women, not only in the workplace, but also in this whole notion of needing to be the best and striving and being very competitive in what we do. And there's an enormous amount of research that actually talks about that kind of internalization of the patriarchy. So in terms of exercise, as I say, I've often used it as an emotional crutch. When I'm angry, when I'm sad, when I'm frustrated, it will give me this lift. But what I've noticed in my own training and physical activity processes is that there are some days where I just don't feel like doing anything. And actually what I really need to do is to rest and to recover. So on those days, I will just practice very gentle yoga exercises, and I will tune into where the body hurts, where the body needs to heal. I'll find out, you know, what's stiff, what's actually not feeling as though it's working particularly well today. Because I do a lot of work on a computer, for example. There are postural defects that I begin to notice, you know, the text neck and, you know, the tension in the shoulders and so on. So as we age, we need to keep those joints moving. We need to oil those joints, but we also need to tune in to what's best for us as human beings. And of course, women particularly, when we are menopausal and postmenopausal, we have huge drops in estrogen. And estrogen also not only affects the capacity for us to repair and heal in the body, but it also affects our mood and our well-being and so on. So if we sort of take all of that into account, and the need for us to do regular weight-bearing activity, because just doing swimming is not enough, we have to actually, you know, get the stamp on the floor. We have to get those bones stronger, and we have to build that, you know, swimming is not enough. I would say that it's a really good thing for us to just vary what we do. So for example, I used to do a lot of running, a lot of dancing, combine that with yoga prior to becoming 50. And then what I noticed as I was going through menopause was that I couldn't actually do, you know, the 50K a week that I was running anymore. And there was a part of me that didn't also want to do it. It was almost like I was listening so well to my body. So what I did was I took up cycling, and so now I combine the running with the cycling. And yes, cycling isn't weight bearing, but what it does do, it enables me to go further. It enables me to be out there in nature and feel less stressed by the whole exercise thing. And it just worked for me. But every person is different. You know, for some women, it's enough to do power walking, and they don't want to be on a bike. They don't want to be running. They just want to be out in nature. So I always say you need to actually listen to what your body is telling you and go with that. But make sure that you get stretching, because we really do need to have that in terms of our mobility, particularly as we age, and also to protect us when there are injuries. I've fallen down quite a few times because I'm very sporty and I push myself too hard. So I've banged into bridges and with my bike, and I've fallen down potholes when I've been out running, all in the last few years. And it's nothing to do with not being fit or aging. It's actually about me just being a gung-ho kind of, you know, athlete.
It happens. It happens. You know, when you're out there, it happens.
But I've never had a really bad injury. I've never broken anything. And I honestly believe that is because of all those years and years and years of dancing and falling and learning how to fall safely, learning, you know, not to stiffen up as you fall and just relax into the fall. all of those things. These are all the kind of fundamental movement basics that I feel very privileged to have learned early on. And now I'm able to apply them as I get older. And I think that's quite a fascinating thing, because I hear of women who fall down in their 40s and they break an arm. I'm like, wow, like I've fallen so many times.
Yeah. If they're sedentary, then yeah, they don't have that. Balance is a use or lose skill. And when we're talking about all these different activities, there's the fit principle, the frequency, intensity, time, type, and then the silent E, what people forget, and that E is called enjoyment. Right? If you don't like cycling, then you're right, you're not going to do it. If you don't like running, you're not going to do it. And that's fine. I tell people the only time you're going to see me run is if I'm being chased, number one, or if I'm on the athletic field or court somewhere and I'll run. But if you call me up and say, hey, Matt, you want to go for a little 5K jog? Oh, man, I got to do my hair. I don't have hair, but that's how much I just hate going out for a run. But I'll go do something else, right? So it's that other E, that enjoyment, that I think is a big important part of getting us out there and moving.
Yes, for sure. And to add to that, I think, and I've always loved running, that, this is just the way I am programmed. But I'm also a dancer. So what I find is if I'm sedentary all day, I'm like a little kid, really. I get to the end of the day and I sort of go, oh, I'm never going to sleep tonight. And I start getting really active, and I'm moving around the house, and I put loud music on, and I just start jigging about the house, and I'm dancing and I'm galloping and I'm doing my little TikTok dances and what have you, and I'm just like I'm burning off the last kind of bit of energy that I was unable to use. Right. Because I'd been screen-based for most of the day. So again, I'm tuning into my body, and I'm doing that sometimes when I'm cooking dinner. I'll put this music on and I'll be off round the house. My neighbors must think I'm a nutter, but it's boom, boom, boom with the music, and I'm just burning off and using that. Then what I'll do is I'll eat, and then sort of an hour or so later, then if I'm watching a bit of Netflix or something like that, then I will just do some gentle stretching, and that will wind me down for bedtime. So for me, it's about tuning in and saying, take more little breaks during the day, little movement breaks, 5 minutes here, 10 minutes here. Accumulation method is proven to be very, very effective. So try to avoid those long sedentary hours of 7-8 hours on a computer. Break up every 45 minutes, every 50 minutes. Get up, walk around the house, put the washing out, go for a walk around your office area, walk to the photocopier, whatever it is, but break up your sedentary behaviors. And then you've accumulated. It's amazing when you track yourself with your watch, you've gathered 5,000-6,000 steps without even knowing or saying to yourself. It's what we call incidental exercise, and without even planning to do it sometimes, and just going with, oh, I can't do this anymore, my head's too full, I'm going out on a walk. It's that incidental exercise that can actually build in this lovely accumulation of activity into our day. And then you've only, in the evening, you might just do some stretching, or you might have a little dance, as I do, or whatever.
You're so right. You're so right. So as we wrap this up here, tell everybody where you want them to find you. Where can they follow you? I know I follow you on LinkedIn and X/Twitter, but where are you kind of mostly on and can help people out with?
Oh yeah, sure. Well, I run a very popular Facebook page, and I call that PE, Fundamental Movement Skills and Holistic Health. I have nearly 53,000 followers now. I produce summaries of research in health and physical activity And I also put up videos and I discuss them and I talk about, the latest research in relation to physical education, pedagogy, physical activity, health, etc. So you can find that's a long title, or you can just go into Facebook. Usually can be found by just going to @3 dancing feet, all one word. So if you just Google me @3 dancing feet, you'll find I've got the same handle for Twitter X. I've got the same handle for Facebook. I'm not much on Instagram.
That's the number 3. We'll be specific. That's the number 3,
yes,
not the words 3. So the number 3 dancing feet.
Yes, exactly. And you can also, if you're interested in fundamental movement skills, I have a book. You can purchase that directly from me. And that is called Fundamental Fun. And that's all about bringing in play-based pedagogy with fundamental movement skills. So bringing as you said, Matt, bringing the enjoyment back to the learning of fundamental movement skills to make it more play-based, which is, children's driver is play as opposed to work. And that you can find on, again, my website, which is the week site, and that's @3 dancing feet again. Otherwise, you can just Google me, Rachael Jefferson, or I also go by Rachael Jefferson Buchanan in the past. And you can find my LinkedIn there as well. But those are the sort of the main ones. I am on Instagram, but very rarely. I usually just stalk people on Instagram.
Truth be told. All right, so as we finish this real quick. So what do the Australians call Australia?
We can do it now at the end, can we?
Yes, say it.
They call it the arse of the world.
The arse of the world. I love that. That's fantastic. And then we come to the arse of this podcast. So I thank everybody for joining us today. So this is Matt Peel. Remember to go out there and please subscribe, like, share the Peel Appeal podcast. So until then, I will talk to you later.
Are you ready to get in the game? Get personal help, sign up for our newsletter, and pick up your copy of Athlete in the Game of Life, the book, all at mattpeel.com. Thanks for listening.